showed me why. Instead of asking why, start asking why not. Time flies when you're having fun. Time flies when you're lying in the sun. Bit by bit, the older that we get, the faster it tick, 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 ticks. Time flies. Whoa, whoa, time flies.
All right, here we go. I'm Lyndall Fraker again here with you today with the Marshfield Old School Times. Coming to you from George Ballard's counseling office right here on the second floor of the old school building. And we got a guy with us today that's spent a few hours and days and years in this building and knows the back buildings quite well back there where we had band and sang vocal music. Richard McGehee, thank you for coming in today.
My honor.
Well, we're really looking forward to today. Probably had as much response after I sent out the invitation on Facebook yesterday morning really early, or I guess it was Thursday night late. Probably had about as much response, people making comments and liking us having you as our guest. So that tells you something.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard's going to be here. We're going to talk a little bit about his life, actually. And not that it's an obituary, but we're documenting history. That's our job here with Marshfield Old School Times, and we want to have people that have been a part of our community and played a big part in many people's lives, like Richard has, be able to document their lives and maybe a little bit about what they've done to accomplish all that they have in life. And that's what we're trying to do for future generations mainly. So should be calling you Reverend Richard McGehee. I told him this, and he may or may not have liked it, but I kind of look at him as being Northern Webster County's Billy Graham. He's kind of the elder statesman of faith in my book, and again, it says an awful lot about him as his character. So, Richard, we like to start at the beginning, and a man that you know pretty well out there in the beach community, Gary Price, he always used to say, well, I came to America in 1951, so when did you come to America? And tell us a little bit about growing up and your family and folks and so forth. That's how we start. So.
Born in 1947, Springfield, Missouri, at the old Baptist Hospital. And my wife and I both grew up in the Stratford community, did all of our school there. Wasn't a large town at that time, but
Oh, railroad town, wasn't it?
railroad town.
Yeah.
Still remember the side of the old depot that was there. Yeah. It was just small town America, you might say.
Did you live right in town or out on the farm?
We lived in town. Now my wife lived on a farm.
Yeah.
But
And her maiden name was
Nancy Campbell.
Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a prominent Stratford name.
That's right. That's right. Really Greene County.
Yeah. Was there a farm north of town?
Northeast.
Northeast,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Along a part of what some call the old wire road.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Part of
The Natchez and all out in that way.
Yeah.
Pretty good farming country out in there.
It is. It is. And they did a good job too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we grew up, like I say, went to school there all of our schooling years. She went to church across the tracks at First Baptist, and I went to church at the Methodist church, the other side.
Yeah. Well, that Methodist church served a lot of families for a long time. I guess it's not as active as it used to be, but like most of the United Methodists are, but which in my opinion is kind of a shame, but that's how it is.
Yeah. But we were in high school together, and
you graduated in '65, right?
yes, yeah. And so this year there will be a 60th reunion, I suppose.
Yeah.
As the fellow said, kind of a quick trip.
Oh boy, isn't it though? Yeah, my 50th will be coming up in a couple of years, and of course had you as a vocal music teacher, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So you and Nancy, when did you make her your bride then?
In 1967.
67.
Yes.
Okay. And you tell us a little bit about after you graduated, I think you were in ROTC and
Went to SMS.
Yeah.
Of course, ROTC at that time was compulsory, and
yeah,
there was a lot of tension across
Oh, man.
America.
right at the height of the Vietnam War.
Yeah. And it was it was a tense time
Yeah.
for a lot of young men, especially
Mhm.
young families.
And mothers of young
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But went to SMS, got a BS in music education, and then graduated. I came here to Marshfield to do my student teaching. Of course, at that time, I think you could have maybe 3 selections that you were hopeful would be places that you could go. We always came down to, everybody in Webster County calls it the fourth.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
foreigners don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right.
Always
P-rate.
enjoyed the band concert on the courthouse lawn, and I thought from all that I had learned about D. Lewis and the instrumental program, I could probably learn more in 2 months under him than I could in 2 years of
Right.
method classes.
Yeah. Now, did Stratford? I guess you played in the band at Stratford.
Yes.
And vocal music.
Yes.
Did they compete? Or I know they were a lot smaller school. Did you compete much with Marshfield? Or
No.
Okay.
There was not competition.
Yeah.
Of course, there were the festivals like we used to have.
Yeah.
But there was no marching band at that time.
Yeah.
And no competitions as such.
Mm-hmm.
So I applied, and I got to come here to work under D, and that was a great time of learning.
Yeah.
And of course, with the prominence of the instrumental program at that time, I thought, well, that'll help me a lot wherever I might find work,
Absolutely.
find a job.
Mm-hmm.
And so then in the spring, the vocal instructor here announced she was leaving, and so I had opportunity there to be employed. So,
Yeah.
and that's
Who was that vocal music instructor?
Carol Fawcett, Carol Hembry.
Carol Hembry. Yeah. Mrs. Hembry. Yes. See, I was in the 5th grade about 1970, and so I believe, and I could be wrong, I think I missed your year of being a student teacher, but I certainly had you for vocal music in junior high then in the 7th grade. But I think you were probably a student teacher when I was in the 4th grade, I think, but I could be off a year. But I just know I remember you very well as a vocal music teacher in junior high, certainly. Yeah.
And so we were here for 9 years then, until I finally answered the call.
Yeah. Did that call come quickly, or was it kind of something that maybe you worked on you for a while?
It worked on me quite a while.
Yeah.
We'd always been busy in church work, and of course with the music, Nancy was my accompanist.
Yeah.
And we would go here and there to, try to add a little music, and that was a very common occurrence. And then of course, like for funerals, things like that.
Yeah.
Quite busy. And I thought perhaps I was busy enough.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it wasn't all up to you though, was it?
No, it was not.
Did you live at Stratford in those early days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We lived there, and then we didn't move to the Marshfield area until 1975.
I see.
Bought our first farm.
Bought the Freddie Keeler place, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Those were, I'm sure, glorious wonderful days when you bought that farm and started doing farm work and then preaching, and I'm sure you were just young couple that was busy and children coming and all that. Had to be a great time in your life.
It was. We were quite busy,
Yeah.
and the opportunity came then to really answer the call
Yeah.
to pulpit ministry,
Yeah.
and something had to give.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Well, that'd have been scary, giving up the comfort of a retirement and all insurance, all the things that the school was able to offer you to do
it
that.
was a challenge.
Yeah.
It was a challenge.
Certainly, your faith had to really been leading you down that path.
Well, there's one thing about the scriptures. They tell us God always provides.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I felt like with ministry, you never know where there's going to be a hospital call.
Mm-hmm.
You never know when a funeral may be taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I enjoyed teaching, being around young folks kind of keeps you thinking young.
Yeah.
You may not be so young, but you can think
Right.
young.
But you were young when you were a teacher. You were young. You were a young man. Boy, you were well. I'm not just patronizing you, but you were extremely well liked and very respected. And I know there were comments even on the invitation to Facebook that I put out. People just tremendous positive comments and how instrumental you were. Even some future music teachers like Beth Birch, she made the comment how instrumental you were in her decision to teach music. So you influenced a lot of lives.
I hope we've offered a little influence along the way.
Yeah, in many ways. Absolutely. So you, well, first of all, as a teacher, just before we move on to the next chapter, I thought it would be, since we're in this building and this is the Marshfield Old School Times podcast, is there any memories of this building or of Marshfield schools or Mr. Barr or Mr. Walker or Mr. Lewis, anything that comes to mind vividly in that era? That would have been, say, 1970 to 75, right? Or 79, actually. So actually it was the 70s. Anything comes to mind there?
Oh, there could be a lot of things that could come to mind. One of the things I thought that was a plus for both our departments, instrumental and vocal, were the graduation exercises.
Oh, yeah.
Where we were able to have a choir singing along with band accompaniment.
Sure. In this old gym right here.
Yes. And then in the new setting also.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
For all of the students that were participants in both those areas to feel good about themselves, pulling off something that wasn't too easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
That was, I thought that was a very special time.
You bet. We've often talked, even on this show, about the memories in this old gym and just the smells, the sound, the atmosphere, the people, the temperature, the humidity, walking into that gym on a cold winter night and the basketball games playing and the jazz band playing and the popcorn, the FFA boys popping popcorn right in the front door there, if you remember. And all of that. And the stands would just be packed. And how vivid that was in my memory. And many have mentioned the same thing when I brought that up. And how important those times were to our part of our childhood growing up, the camaraderie of a community.
Right. Well, I enjoyed the old gym too in a little different perspective as an out-of-town basketball player coming there to play and the jazz band right against you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that. It was quite impressed.
I bet it was.
With the jazz band sound.
Yeah.
And being able to try to, have just a little extra movement as you were warming up to the beat of the song.
That's right. That's exactly part of it. Yeah. So you were a pretty good basketball player, weren't you?
I played.
I've heard John Black mention that I think you were a pretty good basketball player.
Well, I played.
Of course, John and Joe were great basketball players at Stratford, but they were younger than you.
Yeah.
And I guess you would have just been a couple of years older than Roy Blunt, I guess, when he was there too.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah. So you decided to go into the ministry. Now, I guess your children were probably just very small then.
They were.
Yeah. Why don't you talk for a minute about your kids? You've got. Yeah.
Well, of course, Jeff is our only son. He's the oldest, and he's the one that lives closest to us now here in Marshfield. Yeah. But he was only about 9, I think, when we moved into the district territory.
Yeah.
Although they had started school here by catching a bus out in the very edge of the Marshfield Stratford district. Then Melissa, or Missy, some will remember her. She is our oldest daughter. She is a retired elementary teacher. She and David, her husband, live in the northeast quadrant of Indianapolis, Fishers, Indiana. And it's not a small suburb. It's about as big as Springfield. Yeah. But, she has 4 sons of her own. Wow. And 1 granddaughter. Yeah. So then Jennifer, our middle daughter, she and her family live at Knoxville, Tennessee. Jen, you have to be cautious how you say things sometimes. She is not gainfully employed. You never ask a lady, do you work? They will remind you very quickly they do work.
They do work, absolutely. That's right.
But she travels a lot with her husband. He's with Verizon. She has 3 sons and 1 daughter. The youngest son will be a freshman. The daughter will be a junior in high school. Her son, by natural birth, is a student at Auburn University. He's on the basketball team as a walk-on.
Oh, wow.
He doesn't get to play much.
Yeah.
But just being on that team is,
oh man, that's
a treat.
I bet, yeah.
And so they are heavily involved with basketball, of course.
Yeah.
Presley's his name, and he will graduate at the end of summer. Yeah. They have an adopted son out of the Congo.
Wow.
He came into America via Canada, and it was quite a process, because things have changed as far as entry into America. But he, depending on which university measures him, he's either 6'11" or 7 foot tall. And so his life story is so interesting.
That's really neat. I had no idea that she
growing up in a socialist country, his father is a pharmacist, and his mother is some type of professional. I just don't know exactly which occupation, but wages are all the same for everyone, and they were very poor. So Tomba is this grandson's name. That's his last name, but that's in their culture, that's what they go by. His first name is Amje. It's spelled Handje. Hand of Jesus is the interpretation.
Wow.
But he played soccer early on in his life, but he grew so tall, so fast. He didn't have shoes. you just don't find size 18 everywhere
Yeah.
on
Wow.
the shelves in the Congos.
Yeah.
But they adopted it. He speaks 4 languages. He graduated from high school with a straight 4.0. Wow. Learning the language and just flying through.
That's awesome.
He played for Weber State University. They redshirted him at Tennessee his freshman year to give him more time to develop his skills.
In basketball.
In basketball.
Yeah.
He went to Weber State out in Utah and played there 2 years until he graduated there. This past year's played at Milligan University in Tennessee, where he's working on a master's. I don't know where he'll play next, but that's kept Jen pretty busy.
I imagine.
As they travel a lot.
So you talked about his folks, so did they sort of willingly give him up, or how did that work?
Yes, to have opportunity
Better
for
life.
a better life.
Yeah. That's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Does he still have a relationship?
Yes, he still communicates. And of course, when he visits with them, it's in a type of French brogue, and you have no clue what he's
Right.
saying.
And you mentioned his name obviously means Jesus. So is there a Christian religion?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
But as time has gone on, in certain areas over there, it's very dangerous.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. Yeah.
But his pastor was saved in a Billy Graham crusade years ago over there.
Wow.
And has led him. He's a young man of deep faith. Just a big teddy bear.
That's awesome. Now, how old was he when he was adopted then, or came over?
He came over, I think he was 13 at the time.
Yeah.
But that's Jenny's family. And,
yeah. That's a story in its own, right?
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to lift these 2 boys higher than all the
No,
others.
but it's worthy of discussing and letting people know about him for sure.
Mindy, our youngest, has just retired this past Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
As a litigation specialist with Missouri Employers Mutual Insurance.
Okay.
And she did quite well in her career, and now she is celebrating less stress.
Yeah. Where does she live?
She lives just outside of Rocheport, Missouri.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she and her husband are there.
Yeah.
That's the family.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And you, how many grandkids?
We have 11.
11. Well, I'm glad I'm impressed that you can count. You didn't have to count them. You knew.
Don't ask me their birthday.
11 and 2 greats. So that's great. That's awesome. So let's move into the Ebenezer chapter. So we're about half done. So we're doing pretty well on time. It's about 1:30. So you're calling. You had the farm. You had the kids going to school and a busy life, and you began pastoring. What was that like?
Well, like I said earlier, it was challenging because as one who has been in church all my life, but more centered towards the music side than sermon preparation every week.
Yeah.
That was something new. But as I said, we just felt that we had to answer the call.
Yeah.
There was not a lot of deliberation. I had filled the pulpit at Ebenezer 2 or 3 times when their pastor had to be away, vacation, and enjoyed the time. Of course, living close to the church, we visited there some when there was freedom from our schedule
Sure.
with this church at Stratford. So, as their pastor was leaving, there were those that came and asked if we'd be willing to take the pastorate. That's generally at that time not the way the Methodist Conference operated.
Right. Yeah.
But, it came down to the point, yes or no, and I felt like that I would endanger myself to say no of God's provision on my life.
Yeah.
So I said I would if that was agreeable to everyone and acceptable with the hierarchy of the conference. And so that's how we began. And our first Sunday there would have been the first Sunday in June 1979. And as I arrived there and the service was concluding, I was told that the Ebenezer congregation had, I think for quite some time, had a service at Webco in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, first Sunday each month. And okay. And so I tried to think of something quickly.
Yeah.
And we started that, and we did that along with Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night for 16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
That's a pretty remarkable run for a Methodist minister. I don't know what the average is, but I know a lot of Methodist ministers, about 10 years is about all you hear they usually go, and then it's time to move on. So that's a pretty, and the other thing that, and of course I have obviously had family there. My grandparents went there and a lot of aunts and uncles. And so I was very familiar with Ebenezer, but you just really seem to develop personal friendships and relationships with those people that lasted a lifetime and still are. And there's something there that I had to be special.
It was.
Yeah.
The rural congregations so often can cultivate such deep and meaningful relationships as a faith community. And I'm not saying that urban churches and larger churches cannot, but being smaller, there is sometimes, I think, an opportunity for more intimacy, so to speak. And they speak a similar language, so to speak. That sounded redundant, but the work that so many at that point in time had been engaged in agriculture, either in their upbringing or in their lifestyle, their current work, became a common ground to share. And it was a great place to serve, an easy place to serve. And if you wanted really to be served, you would come on the day when there was a church dinner. Because
yeah, for sure.
The rural churches can put on a spread.
You betcha. You betcha. Funeral salads aren't just for funerals, right?
No.
You know, I think that's one thing that the United Methodist Church has lost, and we won't get into that too much, but I want to touch on that because it is important. It's been important to your and my life because that was our denomination. But it seems like you had that connection there because you and those people, you were raised alike, you thought alike, you had raised your families alike. I mean, all the things that we think about and how we should raise our families, you all were the same. Today, it seems as though we've got, with the United Methodist system, bringing ministers in and so forth, that they're not necessarily the same culture. And I think that's been a problem for them, in my opinion.
Well, like I said, we shared a common faith, a common language, and our lifestyles were similar enough
Yes.
that there was not a barrier there.
No, very special. It's had to be a very special time for everyone in that area. And then you moved over. So, what made the decision to move to St. Luke?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
The pastor at St. Luke was leaving,
Mm-hmm.
and the district superintendent that essentially sealed appointments, so to speak.
Yeah.
On the advice and consent of congregations.
Mm-hmm.
But, he called me and said, essentially, I think it's time. I'm going to move you to.
Kind of his decision. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was not mine.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, St. Luke was certainly, I know, very happy about it, I'm sure. How many years there then?
19.
19. It was even longer than Ebenezer. Wow.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. It's remarkable. Um, one thing that I'll mention that I just from my memory, when the community auditorium, the Carl and Glessie Young Auditorium opened, and I'm still on the school foundation board, and I can remember the discussion about, who would be in the program and how we're going to determine and so forth. And Carl Young was one of your members. Carl Young wanted you to sing in the program. Oh, what was that like?
That was quite an honor.
Yeah.
I, of course, visited Carl and Glessie in their home.
Yeah.
And Carl told me that he had asked me to sing. He said, I want you to be the first one to sing on that stage in front of an audience.
Yes.
And that was a very humbling experience.
Absolutely.
And of course, to stand behind the curtain there for the first time and to hear the introduction of Steve Grant, it caught me a little emotionally.
Didn't have a little lump in your throat, did you?
Just a pretty big one, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But I tried to overcome it, not let it show as it opened. But
best I recall, it didn't show, but you never missed a note. But it was a remarkable time, and of course, I have the program right over here among my memorabilia, and I actually looked at the program this week after talking to you because I remembered that story about him wanting you to be the first to sing, and it was a special event, special time for Marshfield, a remarkable time to be able to, for the family, the Young family, to be able to provide that facility that we had all wanted for so long. So you were a part of that, and a big part of that. But I know that's what Carl. That shows you how much Carl and Glessie thought of you, for sure.
Well,
He's their pastor.
They were special for the community in desiring to give back.
Yeah.
And they certainly did.
Yes, they did.
And as a matter of fact, when funds were a little short for the big grand piano, they took care of that. And I think some of the seating needed a little assistance, and they took care of that.
That's right. Yeah. Very, very special time for the community, for sure. So you, when did you then retire from St. Luke?
Well, about 6 years ago.
About 6 years ago. So
I was trying to think on my way up.
Yeah.
Exactly what year was that?
Yeah.
I think it was about 6 years ago. I had not really intended to retire at that time, but with some of the things that were coming on in the denomination at that time, and my status, whatever you would call that, had been reduced down to a quarter-time preacher. The way things were figured.
Right.
I mean, for 35 years, we had Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, plus
Yeah.
whatever else.
That's not quarter time.
No.
It's
And
not. Yeah.
I just told Nancy, I said, surely there's some other work we can do. Of age to retire, certainly.
Right.
So
So you took a little break, kind of, as far as full-time pastoring, and then tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
well, we went to Lebanon to just visit some places, and at the First Baptist Church at Lebanon at that time, there was a pretty large choir, pipe organ, grand piano. Kenny Howe,
Mm-hmm.
choir director there, and it was an easy place to fit in. We were welcomed. And,
Yeah.
So we'll do this a while.
Yeah.
And enjoyed that very much. And then the setting was changing there as far as the music. Of course, they had two services, a traditional and a contemporary. We were in the traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And our hair color blended well with
It
that.
isn't quite as black as it was in those pictures.
That's
I
true.
posted.
That's
but
true.
Still thick though. You got a good head of hair still. So.
So one of my good Methodist pastor friends that had retired, Gerald Klaus, that had been at Niangua and Conway, we were doing a funeral service at Lebanon for a lady that she and her husband's farm was joined our back farm that we have there, and so she had passed away, and Gerald asked, what all we were doing at that time, and I told him, and he invited us to their 60th wedding anniversary. That was going to be at First Christian Church at Lebanon, where they had attended since his retirement. So I said, well, we'll mark that on the calendar. Nancy, at the time of that celebration, was traveling with one of our daughters to one of the other daughters, and I don't recall which trip it was.
Yeah.
So I went, and they had a little dinner that followed the service and celebrating Pastor Gerald and his wife Karen's anniversary. So visited with their pastor, really appreciated him. And so when Nancy got back in the following week, she asked where I went. I told her, I said, I think you'd like it. Well, we'll try it. And we're there ever since.
Yeah.
And in the meanwhile, almost 2 years ago now, the pastor developed esophageal cancer.
Wow.
And
That's a bad one.
what a long battle that was.
That's a bad one.
He passed away back in December of last year. But during that time, they asked me to fill in. And so as it became a little longer tenure, he was able to come back for a couple of months, but then the condition worsened. And so I have been the interim pastor there for a while.
Still interim though.
Still interim. We do have a pastor search committee formed. And, we're sending out information and receiving information.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You enjoy it?
Oh yes. We have. It's not a large congregation, but beautiful sanctuary. Tremendous music program for not a large city church. We have a men's quartet that sings occasionally, made up of 4 retired music teachers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Dr. Ron Atterbury is our choir director and principal organist, although there are 2 others that also play. There's just a lot of musical talent in that church.
Still a traditional service?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
We're not narrow in thought. We have a variety of music.
Yeah.
But we have organ and piano and hymn books
Yeah.
at the pews.
Yeah. So the disciples of Christ, Christians, aren't, they're more independent, or allowed the churches to be more independent, and maybe than some of the other denominations have been.
I would say
Yeah.
that probably is the case, although our late pastor came out of the independent Christian church.
I see.
But they have a classification similar to my experience being classified as a bivocational pastor of the Methodists. But there is some freedom
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Let's talk about the farm for a minute. We haven't talked about the farm much. You got run some cattle, and have for what, 35 years or whatever?
Well, since 1975.
Yeah,
that's had cattle.
Oh man, that's 50 years. I was way off, wasn't I?
We dairied for 27 years.
Yeah.
And of course, the first farm we bought was the Keeler farm. We bought another 80 on High Prairie back about 82, I think it was. And then we bought a half a section down close to Conway in 85, I think it was. And then
is that when you moved?
We didn't move until 90.
Okay.
We bought the acreage where we live down in 90.
I see.
And what we had bought at the northern part of Webster County misses the back part of the Laclede County property by a quarter of a mile, 40 acres.
I see.
So it almost goes together.
Yeah.
Of course, we had sold then what we had at Marshfield on High Prairie. So it gives us...
You still got several acres then?
Well, just a little over 1,000.
Do you? Wow, I didn't realize it was that many. Wow. But both in Laclede and in Webster.
Correct.
You live in Laclede?
We live in Laclede.
Yeah. Okay.
We don't have a lot of cattle, but for me, it's plenty.
Enough, yeah.
With everything, probably 190 or so.
That's a lot of cattle in my book, since I have 8. So. But anyway, that's great. That's great. Well, what do you think? What do you see in the future? Do you plan to continue to pastor, or what do you have? You just going to let God lead you down that path and wherever He takes you?
If the call is on your life, I don't think you just write that off at your convenience. So whatever He has for me, I hope I can try to do, as long as I have health enough and a little bit of mental faculty to do that.
Yeah.
As far as the farm, of course, at my age, I'm 78, so you can't do it forever.
Yeah.
I do enjoy my space.
Yep.
That's one of the things that's tough to give up.
Well, I'll tell you what, 1,000 acres that's a lot of space. That's a lot of
space.
fence. That's a lot of fence.
A lot of fence.
And
a lot of fence.
Yeah, I admire you for that, because that's a lot of work. I know how much work 62 acres is, and that's amazing that you've got that much.
Well, a couple of years ago, of course, the family talks a lot about wanting me to downsize. And so I did. In one respect, I bought some sheep. They're smaller than cattle.
They take more fencing though. You can't put them in a barbed wire fence. That's interesting.
But I probably will sell off the sheep.
Yeah.
I just had a few.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of a novelty.
Yeah. My dad had some. He enjoyed them.
They're
goats. He had a few goats, you know,
Yeah.
in his little acreage in town. Just
Well,
just pets.
yeah. I wanted to get some sheep sometime in my life. My grandfather had always kept a few. I'd help him shear them and all, poor sheep. But I understand more since I've had sheep why Scripture likens us so much to sheep.
Why is that?
It helps you learn habits, the nature. Sheep wander, and there's so much given to us from Scripture about how sheep wander.
So it's important to have a shepherd, huh?
That's true. That's true. And we certainly have a good shepherd.
Oh yeah, no question about it. We forget every now and then.
Correct.
You know, I wanted to just kind of end our time together just briefly, and when I talk about the future, because I think people do look at people like you. You know, they respect. We'll call you an elder or someone that's studied the Bible. You understand kind of what God intended through the scriptures with Christianity and with Jesus and being our shepherd. And what do you see? I know this is a loaded question, but I mean, the churches have moved so much in a different direction than what they were when you and I grew up. Not saying good or bad, I'm just saying they're different. And it appears as though I kind of call it the feel good movement. You know, we're not getting the scriptural base all the time that we used to get. Do you think that's healthy for the churches? I mean, yeah, we've got some great movements and some big mega churches now, but I just worry about where we're headed down the road.
Well, certainly that'll preach.
Yeah.
It is a concern, I think, to many people.
Yeah.
One of the things that we try to lift out in this day and time from the Word is personal relationship with the Savior. For so long, I think a lot of popular commentary and popular thought has been, well, I'm certainly been raised in a good family. We're morally upright as far as it would appear in our modern culture. But if I didn't have a personal relationship with Jesus in the day and time in which we live, I'd be so frightened. Because so much of what I read in Scripture, not being a scholar, not being seminary trained or anything like that, there's so much prophetically that seems to be coming true in our day and time.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there have been scoffers forever that, well, I've heard that before. Heard it all my life. It hasn't happened yet. But there are too many things. Prophetically, it seems to me that from 1948, when Israel once again became a nation in and of itself, and its statehood was acknowledged throughout the world. That set in motion the prophetic clock that had perhaps been stalled for quite some time. And to see the dynamics of world tension now that is totally against Israel, and likewise we as an ally, uh, it to me would be very concerning not to know from whence your faith has come and how it's come. In other words, that personal relationship with Jesus.
Right.
There could be another millennium pass before it's all concluded. But I don't think it will.
Yeah. It seems like the progress that was made from 1948 until, let's say, the Soviet Union fell, it appears to me like, and maybe it's after 9/11, maybe it was, I don't know what, but it seems like we're going the other way again. Now, is it just my memory wanting to remember the good things along the way or not? I don't know, but it just seems like in the last 15 years, maybe 20, that we're moving backwards when it comes to the Middle Eastern climate, atmosphere. That we've got anti-Jewish protests in the universities today. I don't think we really had that 20 years ago. Maybe not. I mean, maybe limited. So there seems to be some, like you said, it seems to me like there's something going on there. And
Well, I'm not speaking of yours, but my age group can remember a lot of the protests, the unsettled feelings that were across America, across the world in the 60s.
Yeah.
We understand how those things can develop, but those were geopolitical.
Right.
This becomes that which is spiritual, that which is scriptural, and the concerns I have are for just the moral climate, the moral compass that used to pretty well govern the neighborhoods,
Exactly.
pretty well govern the regions and states, and a lot of that has quickly deteriorated.
It has, yeah, and even in our pop culture, we certainly always had some of the anti-Christian pop culture out there, but boy, it just seems like it's just taken over, and it's just more rampant today. And it may be because of social media and the internet, the involvement of the internet, and the easy access to anything you want. I mean, that's certainly something that we're dealing with, I think, corporately in America. It's just really sad to see the moral decay that we have today. And I don't know how we turn that around. I don't know how we get to the next generation to turn it around. But you and I do know that the answer is in Jesus.
That's absolutely
no question about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you're doing all you can do to make sure people understand that, but I don't know that I do. It makes you think sometimes.
it. At the same time, there seems to be a lot of new interest in scripture reading and Bible sales, and that which is genuine, especially on the part of a lot of younger adults.
That's good news.
Very good news.
Yeah, it is. That's
Very
great. Well, I know every generation, you look at in a different light, and I can tell you that I see some awful good young people around here. I've got two good boys, and two good grandsons, and I see friends, and I see a lot of good young people that they're better than my generation was at that age. I'll tell you. I think they're doing things more like they ought to be doing. Doesn't mean that they're going to church every Sunday like we did. Maybe we drug off to church, but they're certainly doing a lot of things right in the way they live and the way they do. So
Still a lot of good folks. They're just not in the headlines.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we're probably getting close to being out of time. It's 2:00 and we started 4 minutes late, so we're right up on the hour. One final question.
Okay.
Tell me about the bow tie. You know, Barth, my brother made a comment whenever on the Facebook invitation that play it in the key of Richard. When you're going to play and accompany Richard McGehee, all you got to do is play it in the key of Richard, and everything will be okay. Well, I kind of feel like the bow tie is part of that key of Richard.
Years ago, when I first started, I started studying with a private teacher when I was in the 8th grade. A lady that lived in Springfield. She had sung in the San Francisco Opera. She was Canadian born and reared. Quality lady. She knew her business. But back there, when the little string ties, the real narrow ties, went out of style, they came in with the big ties. And when you would tie a double Windsor knot, it would just seem like somebody had their fist right in your throat.
Yeah.
And so about that time, there were a few bow ties that showed up.
I was a boy, yeah.
And so I believe I'll try this.
Yeah.
And it got that freedom to be out of your throat.
Yeah.
And so I started wearing them, and I've had a lot of smiles.
Oh yeah. Well, that's your trademark.
People, you walk the hospital hall and you see that bow tie or something, I just always say most clowns wear them.
Well, no, I think when people see it and see you, they want to smile.
Yeah.
Because along with that bow tie is a big old smile, usually right on top of it. And I mean that. And the only thing that would be better than this last hour would be to hear you sing, but I wouldn't ask you to do that. That would be embarrassing. But you're a great person. You're someone we all look up to and respect. And I wish you many, many better days ahead, good days ahead, and keep doing what you're doing. Love to have you back anytime, and just appreciate your wisdom and coming in and sharing it with us today.
Thank you. I'm humbled.
Well, thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
We'll see you all hopefully next week. Thank you for joining us, if I could speak, and have a good afternoon.